Hey, Rev students, how are you guys doing? I feel like I haven't seen you guys in a little bit. It feels like it's been a while. I am glad to be back. For those of you who maybe have not been here or summer's been inconsistent, maybe you've been on vacation, maybe you've even been to the beach, which is just like the most special place in all of the universe. Is there any beach people in here? Who's been to the beach? Why haven't you taken me with you? I miss it so much. This is completely off topic, but if you haven't followed me or listened to any of my stories, I can't vacation well. Bad things happen when I go on vacation. The fourth cruise I've tried to go on in the last 3 years just got canceled. So I just can't vacation. So if you have a vacation and it's working out with you, just give me a call, send me an invite. I need a vacation to work out with me. But hey, I'm excited. We're kicking off a new series called Rebellious, and I'm not sure what comes to your mind when you think of the word rebellious. Maybe you think of disobedience, like to your parents, or maybe you think about like a war where people rebelled, or maybe you think about like people who are doing bad things and they're out there being rebellious. So I'm not sure what comes to your mind when you think of the word rebellious, but I'm going to define it for you. I'm going to talk about a little bit about why we're talking about it. So the definition we're going to be working off of is to refuse to obey rules or accept normal standards of behavior. And the reason we're doing this series and the reason we're looking at this is that the world is telling you stories. It has a narrative that it is telling you that there are rules for you to follow and there are patterns of behavior for you to act on that Jesus is calling you to rebel against and calling you to live differently. And so that is where we're going to be going for this week and next week, talking about a couple of different things. And as I was getting ready for this, I remember, do we have any Lecrae fans in here? Does anyone know who Lecrae is? He is a Christian hip-hop artist, really, really talented. I listened to him when I was growing up a lot, still listen to him to today. And but he had an album in 2013, 2014 called Rebel. And the whole premise of it is exactly what we're talking about right now. That if you really want to be a rebel, you can't do what the world's doing because everyone is doing what the world is doing. Just doing whatever you want, when you want it, living life by your own rules. And so say, if you really want to be a rebel, he's challenging you to do something different. There's a little spoken word part in one of his songs. I'm going to read it for you. He says, "You are just a conformist if you're drunk and naked and driving around on a loud motorcycle, smoking cigarettes and breaking commandments." And that's kind of the idea we have when we think of, Rebel. There's a movie, you probably have never even heard of Rebel with a Cause, but there's a really old movie that kind of set, you picture a guy in a leather jacket on a motorcycle smoking a cigarette, and he is the picture of a rebel. And he says, everyone's done that. It's so tiring. If you really want to be a rebel, do something different. Read your Bible because no one is doing that. That's rebellion. That might be the only rebellion left. And the reality is that our life is always going to be lived following some type of rules and some type of standard of behavior. Maybe this summer you have gone to some type of pool with a lifeguard, and at some point that lifeguard started setting some rules or setting some patterns of behavior. They might have said, don't run by the pool. They might have said, don't dive in the shallow end. They might have said, don't use the bathroom in the pool. And I'm going to say that again, and I'm looking at some of you right now. Don't use the bathroom in the pool. You know who you are. And so we're always living by some type of pattern. Maybe your parents have told you, they've given you chores. There are expectations. There are rules you're supposed to follow. So there are rules and patterns of behavior that we are expected to follow. In a couple of weeks, we're going to be going back to school. When you go to school, there are going to be rules and patterns of behavior that you're expected to follow. When that bell rings, it's time to go to class. There's certain behaviors in a classroom that you're supposed to follow. And so no matter where we go, there is no part of our life that is not touched by rules and expectations and patterns of behavior. And a lot of times, this is exactly how we think about God. That really, at the end of the day, all God is worried about is giving us these rules, giving us these do's, giving us these don'ts. And as long as we're doing our best and trying to do more good things than we are bad things, then we're pretty good along the way. And if we believe that, then we're missing out on it. And whether we like it or not, the rules that we follow and the patterns of behavior that we are following are going to influence us. They influence us when it comes to the friends we decide to make. It influences us when we think about who we might want to date or who we might want to marry one day. It influences us on how we treat other people. It influences us on how we spend our time and how we spend our money. So here is the question I want to pose for our time today. That if we live in a culture where most people are just doing what they want. That's the mantra. I'm gonna get what's mine. I'm gonna do what I want to do. If that is the culture that we live in, if that is the rules and the pattern of thinking that most people are following, and if we believe that God is real, which we do, and if we believe that what he's called us to is best, which we do, and if he is inviting us to rebel against those lies, those narratives, those patterns of behavior, we have a responsibility to think critically about it. We have a responsibility to do something about that. And so today I want us to, we're going to be looking at one of the stories of Jesus, and there's a lot of significance in this story, and he is going to be doing exactly what we've been talking about. He is rebelling against a modern day idea. He is rebelling about some beliefs, some patterns of behavior that he is calling out, that he is saying is inconsistent, that he is saying is not right. And so that's where we're going to be today. And in this, just some background information before we jump in. If you have Bibles around, we're going to be in John 13 all day today. So if you want to grab a Bible and join us, we're going to be in John chapter 13. And just to set us up, Jesus has been going on his journey. He has been teaching, and he is at the end of his ministry. And all throughout his ministry, the Jewish leadership has opposed him. And the difference between Jesus and the Jewish leadership is that the Jewish leadership had become obsessed with lifting themselves up. They had become obsessed with making people think that they were so great, with people thinking that they were so smart, that people think that God had blessed them with so much. They actually, when they had followers following them, they would have expectations for them to take care of menial tasks for them. There would be expectations for them to do things that they didn't want to do. It was almost like, I'm not sure how many of y'all have entered the workforce yet, or maybe you feel like this at your home, but if you have someone who's in authority over you, maybe you've experienced this where you feel like the only thing that you are doing are the things that they don't want to do. And that is how these people were operating. They're saying, hey, all the things that I don't want to do, that's what I'm going to give these people to do. Those people who are lower than me, those people who are serving me, those people who are following me. And that is the society that Jesus is in and the mindset that Jesus is going to be teaching against. So we're going to jump in. John 13, verse 1, it says, now before the feast of Passover, when Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart out of this world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. So we know a couple of things about this meal that they are taking part in. This is the Passover meal. It has a lot of significance. It's been celebrated every year for hundreds and hundreds of years, celebrating God freeing his people. So if you've heard of Moses or the story of the burning bush or Pharaoh, let my people go, that is what they are celebrating in this moment. And we just learned that Jesus knows that this is his last moments. And there's some significance there. I don't want us to glaze over it. I don't want us to miss what's going on here. Jesus knows that these are his last moments, and he's at this meal of special significance, and he's invited his closest friends to come share in this last meal. And Jesus is the celebrity. Jesus is the head of the table. Jesus is the leader. Jesus is the big deal in this story. And he has all the power to do what he wants to, has all the authority to do what he wants to. And what we're going to see in here is that he's going to choose to serve. And I'm not sure, you've probably thought about this before. There's this very common saying, if you knew you only had 24 hours to live, what would you do, right? They have a song about it, right? I went skydiving, Rocky Mountain climbing, 3.4 seconds on a bull named Fu Manchu, right? I've just aged myself. Apparently, our parents are doing our students a disservice by not letting them experience the richness of some of the music that is out in the world. But that is what maybe you've thought about that, what you want to do. A lot of people said, man, they just want to spend time with the people close to them. A lot of people said, man, they take risks that they would have never taken if they thought they had their whole life ahead of them. But if they knew they only had 24 hours left, they would take risks they've never taken before. And so there is some significance in this moment, because we might be playing a hypothetical game of what if, but that is what Jesus is experiencing in this very moment. And with all of the power and all the authority over all things, he's going to choose to serve. And I think we're going to learn something about the character of Jesus here and what he is calling us to. So we're going to pick up in verse 3. It says, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hand, and that he had come from God and was going back to God, rose from supper. He laid aside his outer garments, and taking a towel, tied it around his waist. And then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel that was wrapped around them. And so there's a lot of cultural things happening. This would have been shocking to a Jewish audience. The washing of the feet was something that the servant of the household would normally do, and it normally would happen as they entered the house, because if you think feet now are gross, feet back then were awful, all right? So if you're not a feet person, if feet gross you out, you would have not want to done that. And maybe, just maybe, if you were someone of significance, the owner of the house might wash your feet as you are walking into their home to show you special significance, to show you special honor. Yet Jesus enters this meal of abundant significance. This is his last meal. And celebrating, literally what they are celebrating is God providing a sacrifice to save his people, and that is exactly what Jesus is about to do. And Jesus is spending these moments to teach his disciples this. And it says he takes off his outer garment. And you can look in books, and a lot of people just say, it's just Jesus not trying to get his clothes dirty because them feet are nasty, right? But I think there's some significance here because of the way the story is laid out. And what it reminds me of what Paul writes in Philippians chapter 2, verse 6. It says, who, though he was in the form of God, did not consider equality with God a thing to be grasped, but he humbled himself. He emptied himself, taking on the form of a servant. He lowered himself. And being found in human form, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on the cross. And I don't want you to miss this. In the same way that Paul is sharing the gospel story, that he had all the authority and all the power, and he lowered himself in some manner. That he restricted himself in some way, that he left some of the position, he left some of the power that he had reigning in heaven. He put on human limitations, he put on flesh. And in the same way he humbled himself to serve, and to serve even to the point of death. It says that Jesus began to disrobe. He began to take off his outer garment. And he lowered himself and took the position, even though he had the position of elite status, even though he had the position of a celebrity, even though he had the position of the God of the universe, he lowered himself and humbled himself to serve the ones who should have been serving him. He served the ones who should have been serving him. And what Jesus is communicating here, and what he is doing, he is laying down his right to be served so that he can serve others. And students, there are going to be situations in your life where you are going to be in a position of power. You are going to be in a position of influence. You are going to be in a position of authority. And maybe you think, just like the world thinks, in those moments that you've arrived, and at this point, it's everyone else's job to make you great. It's everyone else's job to make your life easy. It's everyone else's job to serve you. Yet, that's the opposite of what Jesus is doing. And then we have the washing of the feet. And like I said, you have to understand how disgusting feet were, right? Like this, there's no cars, there's no bikes. They didn't even have Crocs, all right? So they're hoofing it a little bit. They have sandals, there's no paved roads, everything's dusty, everything's really, really gross. And normally this would be done before they're coming in at the house, yet they're doing it at the dinner table. Like the closest thing when I was kind of trying to picture how I could relate it for you, it almost would be, and this is, like I said, this is the Jeremy kind of just imagery in this moment. It would almost be like Jesus started clipping people's toenails at the dinner table. That's how disgusting this would have been. I see some reactions that I'm hoping you're understanding. Just how disgusting this would have been. And how, man, I'm not sure if you've ever thought of it. Have you ever had someone that's in authority over you or are in a different position and they start serving you or they start doing something and maybe it's your responsibility and it just makes you feel awkward? Like imagine, this is completely hypothetical. You're walking in your room and the president of the United States is cleaning your room. Like you're like, hey, I think you might have some more important things to be doing than cleaning my room right now. Like there's almost this awkward, like, no, you shouldn't be doing that. I know this is my responsibility. This is beneath you. And if that's true for the president of the United States, how much truer is it for the president of all creation? All of it. And what Jesus is doing is he's breaking a universal rule right here that says you only have to do what you need to. Like that you only do what you have to. Like you do the minimum, right? Like if you get assigned homework for extra credit and that extra credit is just, a good job. If you wouldn't do anything extra. You're not planning on doing extra homework just for the experience, right? If you might do your chores, but you're not going to volunteer to do your siblings' chores just out of the generosity of your heart, right? You're only going to clean when you're asked. You're only going to volunteer when you have to. And that is how most of the world is operating. And Jesus is rebelling against those ideas and saying, you're going to be in situations, you're going to be in positions of power, you're going to be in positions of influence. And when you are, sometimes the most Christ-like thing you can do is to lay down your pride, to lower yourself, to give up rights, to give up privileges, to give up significance, and serve those who offer you nothing in that moment. That are bringing nothing to the table for you, yet you're still serving them. And maybe it's someone else's responsibility and you're doing it anyways. And this is the question we need to be asking based on what Jesus is doing right here. If Jesus, and I don't want you to miss this, lean in students, if Jesus chose to spend his final moments serving others, then we have to ask ourselves why we aren't. If Jesus chose to spend his final moments serving others, there is no one of more significance, there is no one of more power, there is no one of more authority, there is no one who needs to serve less. Yet in that moment, that's exactly what he did. And I love what John says there, that God has given all things into his hands. And I'm not sure if you're thinking like all of the universe, all of the planets, all of the things going on our planet, natural disasters, war, injustice, poverty, all things are in his hand. All things are in his control. All things are in his power. And I love what the author and pastor Warren Wiersbe said is when the Father put all things into the Son's hands, he picked up a basin and a towel and began to wash his disciples' feet. He chose to spend his final moments serving to teach them this, that you are never greater, you are never have more significance than when you are humbling yourself to serve others, when you are lowering yourself to serve others, especially if you're getting nothing out of it, when there's no advantage to yourself. John's going to continue in verse 12. It says, when he had washed their feet and put on his outer garment and resumed his place, he said to them, do you understand what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for so I am. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that you should do just as I have done to you. Truly, truly, I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. If you know these things, blessed are you if you do them. Jesus finishes washing his disciples' feet, puts back on his garment and says, hey, do you understand what's happening here? Like, do you get what I just did? Because I am giving you an example and I don't want you to miss this. And we don't have a lot of time left, but I want to give you 3 things based on that passage right there, what Jesus is saying to them right there, that is our motivation and our reasoning for why not only we should serve, but that is Jesus' expectation of us. The first reason we should serve because Jesus did, and he told us to do it as well. So I'm not sure how you respond to people in authority to telling you to do something. Usually the higher authority they have, the more likely you are to do it. When you're at the highest authority that can ever be achieved and they're telling you to do something, man, I'm just going to give you some free advice right now in this moment. You should just do it. And Jesus here, he says, when it comes to serving, he says, if I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. He says, when it comes to serving, he's not asking if you are going to serve. That is not the question that Jesus has put in front of you in this moment. It's when are you serving and who are you serving? It's not an if, and so many people get caught up as like, I just don't know my gifts, or I don't know where God has me, or I don't know what he wants you to do. And those are good questions and should be thought about. But I believe based on this, he's saying, look around you and find somewhere where you can lower. There is no task too small for you to serve. There is no thing too lowering for you to show someone the love of Christ. In any moment, literally go find someone and serve. It could be cleaning up a mess when you're at school. Someone drops some books in the hallway and you take the time to simply help them pick it up. Maybe it's helping your parents even if they didn't ask you, and maybe even thanking them because you realize how much hard work. I know that's a rebellious thought, like that's just crazy. You're like, all of you are like, this is crazy talk. What is Jeremy saying up there? But to just think of all the work that they do, if you began to help, if you begin to choose to do something, that you might realize all that was done for you. It doesn't even have to be a specific act. It could simply be inviting someone into your circle, into your group, into an activity that you are doing, that when they feel excluded, when they are on the outside, you can invite them on the inside. You could stand up for someone who is being spoken about badly, who's being gossiped about. Second reason, we should serve because it shows people they are valuable and worth serving. Shows people they are valuable and worth serving. Jesus says right here, truly, truly, I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. And students, some of the things that I have learned throughout my life is that oftentimes your character is shown in how you treat those that have nothing to offer you. When nothing is benefiting you in that moment, when nothing is helping you out, how do you treat people? And Jesus is saying, hey, the master isn't greater than the servant. And so if the master can serve, then the servant can serve. And when you do that, you actually show people they are worth serving, that they have inherent value. And man, can I tell you how many people are walking around that don't believe that? How many people are walking around wishing someone would just care, that someone would just notice them, that someone would see them? And Jesus is saying, you are never too great to serve someone else. He's saying, if I can do this, then there's no reason you shouldn't be doing this. Third reason is we should serve because we will be blessed. Jesus says, if you know these things, blessed are you if you do them. Man, I love how he phrases it there. Hey, if you know what to do, you're not blessed just knowing, you're blessed in the doing. I love how James says this in his epistle. He says, hey, if you know the good you should do and you don't do it, you sin. And so what Jesus is setting up here, he's saying, hey, if you see something that you can do, you should go do it. And he said there is blessing in that. Most people think the happiest they will ever be is when other people are lifting them up, when other people are serving them. And he says, no, don't miss this. There is a blessing, there is a joy that is found in sacrificing and serving other people. When you bless other students, you leave blessed. And like I said, Jesus is saying, hey, if you do it, you're blessed. But if you know that there is good for you to do, if you know that there is opportunity that has been put in front of you and you don't do it, not only do you sin, but you miss out on all that God has for you. So students, here's my challenge for you. Be rebellious enough to do what you don't have to do. Be rebellious enough to do what you don't have to do. And there's so many opportunities out there. And Jesus is going to tell you, maybe you have this idea of yourself that you are too good, that you are too smart, you are too talented, that there's something beneath you. And he says, no, don't miss this. You are never greater than when you are serving. Don't get it wrong. Don't believe the lies of the world. Don't believe what they're saying. And don't miss out on all that he has for you. Because that can happen. There's the thing that we didn't get a chance to get into in this story is that out of the 12 disciples, there is one specific person in this room named Judas. And while Jesus, the God of the universe, was lowering himself, was humbling himself to serve his disciple, and he's taking some dirty, nasty feet, and he's washing it, and he's washing it, and he's washing it. And he's saying, hey, you should do this as an example. You should look at what I'm doing, and this is how you should treat people. And at those very moments, it says that Judas is plotting to betray Jesus for some money. He is counting his coins. He's counting what he can get out of it at the very moment that the God of the entire universe is serving him. And he missed it. He missed it because he was so focused on lifting himself up. And students, if we believe what the world is saying, that we are just here to lift ourselves up, to get our own, to do the minimum, and that other people around us are there to make us look great, to make our lives easier, then I believe we're missing out on all that God has for us. I don't want that for you, students. You are never greater than when you are serving. Pray with me. God, we come to you today, Lord, and we are thankful that you've brought us in this place. God, we are thankful that we have a God that sent his son, that lowered his son, took on flesh, lived a human life, and in his final moments, chose to serve us. He is going to leave that meal and get arrested, stand trial, get tortured, and die on a cross. And the example he has set in front of us, students, is to serve others well, because that's how he chose to spend his final moments. And if Jesus is doing that, then we need to. God, help us have that mindset. Help us look for opportunities to show others how good you are through our acts of service, to show others the model that you have set for us so that it will point back to you and other people can see how good that you are, God. And if our hearts are hardened towards people in our lives, if our hearts are hardened to think that we're too great to humble and lower ourselves, God, break us of that. Reveal that to us in this moment. We love you and we trust you. In Jesus' name, amen.